Alright, Chapter 13. Ragweed Wanders. Though Ragweed woke up in the old bus quite early, Windshield was already working hard on his painting. The stout mouse, lost in thought, spent long periods of time staring at his work. During these times he hardly moved except to glance at his caps of paint, then back at his work. It was as if he were painting the picture in his mind. Then he would burst into a fury of activity, dipping his tail into the first one, a bottle cap, then another, all but throwing the paint onto the picture with wild abandon. Not too long afterward, Dipstick and Lungnut appeared. Clutch was roused from her sleep to greet them. The members of the B-flat tires embraced warmly. "Hey, dudes," Clutch cried. "You made it! Far out! Cool! Killer cool!" "I'm glad to be alive," Dipstick said. "I mean, those cats turned off like 20 dudes." "Oh, Mouse, man, totally nasty," Clutch cried. "And the club's wasted, knocked out of town. What was ain't no more." "Lost my bass," Lugnut added in his sleepy way. "Dipstick lost his drums. What about your guitar?" "Blew apart on Silverside's nose," Clutch said. "My deck, too." She told her friends how Ragweed used her skateboard to save her. "Awesome, dude," they both murmured, considering Ragweed with new respect. Both put up their paws to slap. Ragweed was pleased. "But bummer, dudes," Dipstick said. "Now we've got no place to play." The band members looked at one another and nodded sadly. "Awesome ugly," Lugnut said. "Way down," Dipstick agreed. There was a moment of silence. Then Clutch brightened. "Hey, dudes, how about some chow?" "Yo, Mouse," Lugnut agreed. "I could eat a cat." The three mice went looking for food. Ragweed held back. He had the feeling he was intruding, that the three band members needed to be together without him. He was still hesitating when Windshield came up to his side. "Wonderful how the band stays together, isn't it?" the artist said enthusiastically, nodding in the direction of the trail. "As I see it, young mouse," he went on, "it represents a whole new trend. Mice sticking together in the face of... That reminds me," he rushed back to his painting. Ragweed wandered about the dilapidated bus when he came upon Clutch's mother. Foglight appeared not to have moved since he first had seen her. She was still hunched over her work, her writing stick chewed to a nub. She looked up at Ragweed, puzzlement in her eyes. "Are you a friend of Clutch's?" she asked. Actually, yes," Ragweed replied. "I came yesterday and you and I were introduced." "Oh, Clutch has so many friends," Foglight said, though there was no recognition in her eyes. "Do you know a good word for brave?" "Fearless?" Ragweed said gravely. "That'll be the day," Foglight murmured and went back to pondering her writing. Feeling completely at sixes and sevens, Ragweed returned to where the three mice were eating and talking. "Hey, dudes, I think I'll go." "Catch you at my pad," Clutch called after him. Ragweed, who gladly would have changed his plans if his new friends had asked him to join the threesome, gave a casual wave and made his way out of the nest. Once outside, he squinted at the bright sun. He had almost forgotten about daylight. The thought brought an unexpected wave of homesickness. At the brook, one was always aware of the time of day. In the city, apparently, daylight was a surprise. "It is different here," Ragweed murmured to himself without much enthusiasm. With no particular desire to return to Clutch's place without her, he crept alongside the sidewalk, keeping close to the base of the walls and old human nests. From time to time, he would dart forward, pause, and sit up to look about, mainly checking for cats. Seeing none, he continued on, heading no place in particular, just wandering aimlessly. The size of the human nests awed him. They appeared to him almost as big as the sky. When cars tore by, emitting smoke, fumes, and noise, he was terribly frightened. Clearly, such contraptions were to be avoided at all costs, but there were so many of them. From time to time, Ragweed saw humans too. Though also huge, they generally paid no attention to him. There were moments when Ragweed wondered if they even saw him, but when a human finally did notice him, the human stopped, uttered something like a gasp, and moved around Ragweed in a wide circle. "This city certainly doesn't like mice," Ragweed murmured to himself. Still, what did impress him about the city was the endless variety of things to be seen. The range of color was extraordinary, rather like one of Windshield's paintings, shapes and colors that were endlessly fascinating. Equally engrossing to him was the angularity of everything. In the country, one rarely saw a straight line. Even the tallest, straightest tree had some curve to it. In the city, you had to search for a curve, though you could, of course, find them. As for the smells, they were infinitely varied. Some were pleasing, others not. Most simply hung in the air. Ragweed suspected it would take a lifetime to sort through them all. It was also hard to determine where city noises came from. There was nothing like the quiet rustling of the country, more like the music of the B-flat tires. As Ragweed continued to wander, he heard a sound that seemed familiar. It took him a moment to recognize the train whistle. It came to him like the call of an old friend. In his meandering, he had drawn close to the railroad. He reached to the end of the block. The railroad tracks were just across the way. Clutch's car stood on the far corner. He could even see her entryway. Ragweed faced his choices: to board the train out of Amberville or to wait for the new friend to return. Excuse me. He thought again about the death of so many mice and the destruction of the Cheese Squeeze Club. With a sigh, he had to admit there was every reason for the mice to be discouraged. Struggling against FEAR just didn't seem worth it. I mean, like, maybe that's what city life is about, he told himself. But if he left, didn't he owe it to Clutch to at least explain why he was leaving? Stop making excuses, he told himself. Go while you still have the chance. Face it, dude, city life ain't for you. As Ragweed moved closer to the tracks, he noted the pile of junk where he had hidden from Silverside's upon his arrival. Though he knew it was not the sweetest smelling of places, he decided he could hide there safely, at least until a train came by. A quick dart took him deep into the pile. Phew, he murmured, totally stinks. Detouring around some old cans, he found a high, dry perch that provided an unobstructed view of the train tracks. Which direction should I go? Ragweed mused. After some reflection, he decided he would leave that decision to fate. He would hop the first train that came in from either direction. Except no way am I going back to the brook, he promised himself. Not yet. Wouldn't it be cool? So resolved, Ragweed squatted down, fixed his gaze upon the tracks, and prepared to wait for as long as it took for the train to show up. He had been there for some time when his eyes began to wander. Only then did he see that not far from where he was, near the heap of dirty white clay chunks, Silversides was crouching. Oh, bummer, Ragweed groaned. It's her again. What's she doing here? Moving carefully so the cat would not notice him, Ragweed edged himself higher on the pile in order to get a better view. It was then that he saw what held Silverside's rapt attention. On the mound of white clay, some 8 feet from the way the cat crouched, a mouse was perched. To Ragweed's amazement, the mouse was entirely white. Ragweed had never heard of it, much less seen it, a completely white mouse before. His first thought was that he was seeing a ghost. He stared at this mouse intently to reassure himself that the mouse was in fact real. Moreover, not only was it real, it was very, very frightened. Ragweed's speculations were interrupted by the sound of a whistle. A train was coming. Bummer! All I want to do is get out of here, Ragweed reminded himself. Nothing but weird cats chasing weird mice. Too much, man. No way do I mess with this dude Silversides again. Even so, Ragweed could not take his eyes from the scene. The cat was creeping closer and closer to the white mouse. For his part, the white mouse kept poking his head up and then ducking down into a hiding place. It dawned on Ragweed that this mouse was not aware of Silversides. Hey, dude! Ragweed murmured under his breath. Unless you do something fast, you are like gonna be ghost for sure.